I heard the crack before I saw him fall. Cartwheels spinning, one busted completely, and Mr. Jennings, the janitor who'd been there longer than the company itself, was sprawled half on the sidewalk, half in a slush puddle the size of my dignity. I was halfway through mentally rehearsing Q4 projections when instinct kicked in. I dropped my tote, knelt right there in suede heels that were definitely not rated for combat ice, and slid my arm under his coat. "Easy, Mr. J, I've got you," I said, gripping his elbow while slush soaked clean through my tights. He winced but waved me off with that same raspy chuckle. "You're gonna ruin those fancy shoes, sweetheart." "Then they'll match my salary," I muttered, hoisting him to his feet. His salt tub had popped open in the fall, half the contents scattered like sad snow glitter. I found the backup bag zip-tied under the busted cart and ripped it loose with my house keys. Took 30 seconds to dump a thick line of salt across the patch. Another 30 to wheel him inside with one arm steadying the tilt of the busted cart. I didn't look around. There was no one clapping. No applause. Just my heart hammering through my ribs and a freezing wind knifing across my thighs. I could already feel the sting of wet fabric freezing in real time. I glanced at my watch. 8:58. The meeting started at 9 sharp. Shit. I bolted inside, bypassing the lobby mirror I usually use to make sure my lipstick hadn't wandered into clown territory. This was it, the meeting. The one that could land the $200 million account we'd all been tap dancing around for weeks. I'd worked on the proposal deck myself, and while Lisa, our crusty-eyed VP of optics and buzzwords, would be hogging the spotlight, I was the one who could actually answer real questions. If they let me talk. But let's be honest. That was never the plan. I wasn't the face. I was the fine print. And right now I was 5 minutes late, damp, and praying my mascara hadn't become abstract art. I hit the boardroom door just as Lisa was clearing her throat theatrically. She paused, turned with the grace of a disappointed drama teacher, and gave me that slow, exaggerated blink she perfected like it was a goddamn TED Talk on passive aggression. "Well," she said, lips tight, voice sugar-coated poison, "nice of you to join us." A couple executives chuckled, more awkward than amused. I kept my face neutral, head slightly down, and slid into the nearest chair. Across the table, a man in a tailored navy suit looked up. Mr. Gallen. The client. Silent. Watchful. Eyes like glass marbles. Unreadable. He didn't smile. He didn't frown. He just noted. Right about here is where most people click away. But if you've made it this far, take half a second, like the video, hit subscribe. 97% of people listen without doing either, and honestly it means more than you know. Motivates the whole team to keep telling these stories. Thank you. Now back to the moment I realized my soaked heels were the least slippery thing in that room. Lisa launched into the deck with her usual gusto, high on her own buzzwords. Synergize, optimize, brand alignment. Her voice was practically smirking. I watched the client. Not once did he pick up a pen. Not once did he nod. And somewhere behind my soaked tights and cracked knuckles I realized he was already making up his mind. I just didn't know how yet. Lisa had paused mid-slide like I'd rolled in with a marching band. The way she sighed loud, performative, hand on hip like I'd personally insulted her calendar app, made me want to melt into the floor. "Nice of you to join us," she said with that brittle smile that didn't touch her eyes. Laughter flared. Half-hearted and awkward. The kind of chuckle people do when they're not sure if they're supposed to laugh or offer you a shovel for the grave. I nodded slightly and took the last chair. The one by the window no one wanted because the blinds rattled whenever the HVAC kicked on. Mr. Gallen didn't smile. Didn't frown. Just glanced at me once and returned to the folder in front of him. No laptop. No phone. Just a pen resting on blank legal paper. Lisa clicked back into the next slide like she was revving an engine. As I was saying, our integrated strategy leverages omnichannel capabilities to drive scalable growth. I bit down on the inside of my cheek. We were only 7 minutes in, and she'd already used every word she'd learned at last year's Executive Presence for Women workshop. I'd helped build this deck, reorganize the case studies, triple-check the math in the ROI projections, and now I got to sit in the corner like an unpaid intern while she tried to peacock us into a contract. Gallen didn't blink. Literally. He stared at the screen with the patience of a taxidermied hawk. Lisa didn't seem to notice. She was too busy waving her acrylics toward charts she didn't understand, tossing around terms like data fidelity and customer ecosystem, as if they were interchangeable with vibes. She cut off Raymond twice, our finance lead, when he tried to clarify something about projected margins. When I offered a soft correction about onboarding timelines, she talked right over me, like I was a sound effect. The worst part? I'd seen this all before. Lisa was good at one thing, stagecraft. She knew how to perform competence, how to use words like partnership and alignment in a sentence that sounded impressive but meant absolutely nothing. And I clearly was the unglamorous backup dancer. My heart thudded a little too hard. Not because I cared about the slight. I was used to swallowing it. Again and again. What shook me was Gallon. The way he stayed silent. The way his fingers hadn't moved. He wasn't charmed. He wasn't engaged. He was observing. Not the slides. Not the deck. And somewhere between Lisa's fourth metaphor about brand scaffolding and her painful attempt at humor about Gen Z marketing, I realized something unsettling. He was waiting for what I didn't know. But he wasn't buying the pitch. Not yet. Not from her. By the 20-minute mark, Lisa had transformed the boardroom into a one-woman improv show where the only audience member who mattered still hadn't moved a muscle. Mr. Gallon sat like stone. No notes, no questions, no fidgeting. Just that steady, neutral gaze that felt more like surveillance than interest. Lisa didn't notice. Or maybe she did and panicked in the only way she knew how, by doubling down. Let's pivot to our predictive engagement matrix, she chirped, clicking to a graph she couldn't explain if her lashes depended on it. Raymond leaned in, trying again. If I may, I think it's worth highlighting how that matrix actually ties into. Lisa cut him off with a raised hand. Let's stay high level for now, Ray. We don't want to drown in data. Ray's mouth snapped shut. I waited, counted to 5. Then slid my hand slightly forward. Just to clarify, the engagement model actually auto-adjusts based on user segmentation. So, for instance, in phase 2 of the rollout, Lisa jumped back in like I'd hit a buzzer. Which is exactly why we've kept the architecture lean and adaptive. She didn't even glance at me. Just steamrolled the sentence like I hadn't spoken. Gallon shifted slightly in his chair. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I saw it. His eyes had landed on me for just a second. Not wide. Not surprised. Just there. Then he looked back to the screen. Lisa was sweating. Not physically, but I could feel the performance tighten. Her hands got bigger, her metaphors looser. We're not just offering a service, we're offering a journey. A scalable, sustainable, omnichannel transformation experience. I watched one of our junior execs blink slowly like he was trying to process those words into something useful. The CEO scribbled something on a post-it. I could see just the corner of it. He hasn't said a word. And still Lisa plowed ahead. Now, I know we started a bit off schedule due to a late arrival, she said with a pointed glance that stopped just short of a snarl. I didn't move. I didn't react. I wasn't going to give her that. But the temperature in the room changed. Not dramatically, but like someone had opened a window just a crack. I watched the unraveling begin. You don't need screaming or slamming fists to see a system fail. Sometimes all it takes is silence. And right now, Gallon's silence was deafening. By the time Lisa wheeled in the brand team, the room felt like a perfume ad drowning in its own budget. 4 people in matching navy outfits, all smiles and surface, shuffled in with ring lights and color-coded packets like we were about to launch a space shuttle instead of a campaign proposal. This, Lisa announced, is our activation strategy. Built to dazzle, designed to disrupt. Gallon didn't flinch. His pen was still resting exactly where he'd placed it when he sat down, parallel to the folder, unmoved. The brand team dove in with an energy that was borderline evangelical. Talk of emotional resonance and aesthetic touchpoints. Splash pages of mock-ups featuring ethnically ambiguous models smiling at salad. The words blurred together like a TED Talk being run through a blender on high. Gallon's eyes didn't track the screen. He wasn't looking at the speakers, the slides, the carefully branded water bottles. He was looking at a scuff. On the edge of the conference table, maybe 3 inches across. Faint but visible. A scrape in the lacquer that someone had tried to buff out but hadn't finished. He stared at it like it was the only thing in the room worth paying attention to. Lisa was oblivious. She kept flipping pages, arms wide like she was unveiling a Broadway finale. Of course, all of this is scalable. We've built optionality into every phase. Customization is our middle name. I watched him. Not Lisa. Not the slides. Him. He blinked once. And then Lisa did it. The thing. She laughed. Not naturally. Not warmly. The kind of laugh that was designed for social media clips. Then while sliding to the next deck, she tossed it out like it was harmless. Though we did get a slightly late start this morning. Someone must have thought janitor-level punctuality was the vibe. The chuckles that followed were fewer this time. More confused than amused. I kept my face still. That's the trick. You don't flinch. You don't blink. You breathe through your teeth and remember that no one climbs out of a pit by screaming at the people who put them there. But Galen looked up. For the first time since the meeting began, he actually turned his head toward her. And the look he gave her wasn't angry, wasn't shocked. It was still, utterly still. Cold in the way marble is cold, quiet, firm, and old. Lisa didn't notice. She was already moving to the next slide. But I saw it. I felt it. Something in the room had shifted. The show was over. He just hadn't said it yet. Lisa was mid-sentence, something about brand elasticity across verticals. When Galen's voice cut through the room like a saw through satin. Who's your lead point of contact for post-deal operations? No raised hand. No warning. Just a single clear sentence dropped like a stone into a still pond. Everything stopped. Lisa blinked, her mouth still half open around the tail end of ecosystems. It took her a half beat too long to recover. I am, of course, she said, smoothing her blazer like the question had been a compliment. Galen didn't nod. Didn't write anything down. Just raised one brow. The kind of gesture that doesn't scream disbelief, but whispers it. Right between the ribs. Are you sure? He asked. The pause that followed wasn't long. Maybe 2 seconds. But in corporate time that's a full semester. Lisa faltered. Just slightly. Her tongue clicked once against her teeth. Well, her technically, she said, motioning vaguely in my direction like I was the office printer. She handles the implementation mechanics. Mechanics. I could feel my molars pressed together. Galen didn't even glance at me. He just let the words settle in the air like dust, watching Lisa's face as if it were a PowerPoint slide he hadn't decided whether to discard or frame as a cautionary tale. I didn't speak. I didn't nod. But inside there was a flicker. A pulse. Validation doesn't always show up with applause or plaques. Sometimes it's in the way a man like that asks a question. Not to get an answer. To see who lies when they give it. Lisa was already flailing forward again, trying to reassert control. Of course. We're a team. A collaborative interface across departments, and she's. He held up a hand. Just slightly. And she stopped talking. Stopped. Lisa. And that was the moment I knew. He'd already figured out who the adults were in the room. He just hadn't handed out the report cards yet. The click of the laptop closing was louder than it should have been. Deliberate. Final. Galen didn't wait for the slide to finish rendering, or for Lisa's next over-rehearsed line. He simply shut the deck like a parent ending a bedtime story that had gone on 2 pages too long. That's all I need, he said, rising smoothly from his chair. No smile. No ceremony. Lisa froze. You could see it in her throat first, just the smallest tightening. Then came the scramble. Oh, well, perhaps we should walk through the numbers. Her voice pitched up a note. Panic braided through professionalism like glitter in mud. There's room to adjust terms if you'd like to. Galen didn't look at her. He looked at me. His eyes, flat as lake glass, softened by a fraction. The kind of shift that doesn't read in photos but is unmistakable in real life. Thank you for earlier, he said, like we were the only 2 people in the room. Not many people stop when it's inconvenient. My breath caught just for a second. Across the table, Lisa turned slowly toward me like she'd missed a step in the staircase and was only now realizing she was falling. Earlier? She said, the word dragged out, hesitant. The room went still. I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Galen adjusted his cuff. Sometimes it's not about timing. It's about what someone does when no one's watching. You could hear the air leave Lisa's lungs. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. And just like that, the power balance didn't just shift. It flipped. Every exec in that room knew it. Felt it like static crawling up their sleeves. Gallon had seen everything. The slush. The fall. The cart. And now? So had they. Gallon didn't wait for a closing statement, or another slide, or even a nod from legal. He reached into his coat and pulled out a slim black folder like it was just another Tuesday. No fanfare. No flourish. He placed it on the table in front of him, opened it with practiced ease, then turned it, not toward Lisa, not toward the CFO, but toward me. She's the only one I'm signing with. 16 words. They didn't boom. They landed. Heavy. Direct. Final. You could have heard a stapler fall across the street. He held out the pen. For a split second, no one moved. Lisa's lips parted like she might say something, but the CFO, God bless him, put a hand on her forearm. Not hard but firm. Contained. I saw his eyes. Wide but aware. He understood what this was. What almost wasn't. Lisa blinked at his hand, then at me like she couldn't quite believe the room had rotated and she wasn't at the center of it anymore. I reached forward, calm as still water, and took the pen. No one spoke. No one needed to. I signed where the marker tabs had been placed. Slow. Neat. The way I'd done 100 contracts before this, but never one with this much weight in the quiet. Gallon took the pen next. Signed in clean, straight strokes. He nodded once to the CFO, closed the folder, and handed it back across the table, to me, not Lisa. And just like that, it was done. $200 million in ink. Signed. Sealed. Saved from the brink by 5 minutes, cracked heels, and a patch of ice no one else had salted. Lisa sat back, blinking too fast. Like maybe if she just looked long enough, she could rewind the room. But the room had already moved on. And I didn't smile. Didn't smirk. I just closed the folder gently and set it in my lap. Some victories don't need a speech. They speak for themselves. The door hadn't even finished swinging shut behind Gallon before Lisa clapped her hands together like she just wrapped a successful charity gala. Well, she said, forcing brightness into her voice. Great team effort, everyone. That's what collaboration looks like. Silence. No one moved. The brand team had already started backing toward the door like interns trying to escape a fire drill they'd accidentally started. Raymond looked down at his notes and didn't look up again. The legal associate from compliance, Rebecca, I think, was already clicking through her laptop, cursor hovering over the CRM dashboard. I reached forward, closed my own laptop gently. Didn't say a word. Didn't need to. Rebecca cleared her throat. Just confirming, we'll shift the account manager record to. She glanced up, met my eyes. You. I nodded once. She nodded back and kept typing. Lisa was still standing there. Hands on hips, face frozen in that tight corporate smile that only ever shows up when you realize the check's not being written to you. The COO leaned toward her, voice low, words sharp. We just closed $200 million, he muttered. And you nearly blew it over a bad joke. Lisa's smile twitched. Then cracked. She looked at me like I'd stolen something. But I hadn't. I'd just been here all along. Doing the work. Being overlooked for so long, you start to believe maybe they're right. That you're forgettable. Filler. Reliable to a fault. A background extra in someone else's slide deck. But not today. Today the room remembered. There was movement in the doorway, just a glimpse. Mr. Jennings, still in his faded blue custodial jacket, peeked in through the small rectangular glass, eyes meeting mine for half a second. He gave a slight nod, barely more than a blink really. I smiled. Nothing grand. Just enough. That nod was worth more than any applause. Because he knew. He'd seen me too. And while Lisa stood in the middle of the room like a dethroned prom queen whose crown had quietly dissolved, I slipped my laptop into my bag and stood up. No announcement. No gloating. Just quiet reclamation. The kind that doesn't need revenge. Just recognition. The snow was falling again, soft this time, no wind behind it. Just flurries spiraling like someone had shaken the sky loose. I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the same stretch where it all started, and glanced down. The patch of black ice was gone. Salted clean, cartwheels long rolled away. No fanfare. No bronze plaque to mark it. Just a spot on concrete that almost changed everything. My heels crunched quietly over the salted gravel. Somewhere behind me, the boardroom door clicked shut. I didn't look back. Hey! I turned. One of the junior analysts, I think his name was Mark or Matt or something equally unthreatening, jogged up beside me, cheeks flushed from the cold or adrenaline or both. He looked half thrilled, half dazed, like he'd just witnessed a live recording of a scandalous podcast and wasn't sure who to root for. "Did you know?" he asked breathlessly. "That he saw the whole thing? This morning. The janitor, the cart, all of it. From the car." I shrugged, pulling my coat tighter. "Didn't do it to be seen." He blinked, unsure what to say to that. Maybe waiting for a punchline. But there wasn't one. I just kept walking. The flakes dusted my shoulders, light and aimless, like the sky had decided to slow dance. My steps felt steady for the first time in weeks. Not rushed. Not reactive. Not background. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket. I didn't check it right away. Didn't need to. But when I did, the subject line was already glowing on the screen. Offer. Director of National Accounts. From Gallon Private Holdings. I stared at it for a long beat. No one else around. Just me in the open air and a new title that didn't require me to beg, prove, or pitch. A job offer without the politics. Without the theatrics. Earned in 5 minutes. Paid in full. I looked up. The sky was clearing. I was 5 minutes late. Right on time, it turns out.